Good morning, everyone. Here, as we come to a close this morning of our time together, I know for me, I have a sense of my heart swelling with a feeling of gratitude for this time together, and I can think of no better note to end on, and no better person to bring that note forward than our good Brother David Steindl-Rast. Brother David has devoted much of his life to teaching and writing and speaking about gratitude, and has even been deeply involved in the founding of a Grateful Living network. Just a couple of things I'd like to say about our good Brother David, which is how I hold him, good Brother David, is that he has recently celebrated his 90th birthday. And also that out of his sense of connection with what's happening here and the launch of the Eckhart Tolle Foundation, and his sense of connection specifically with Eckhart and his teachings, he has flown all the way from Austria to be with us here. So please join me in welcoming good Brother David Steindl-Rast.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. Hard to believe that this is our last morning together. It seems we just started. And how much we have experienced and how much we have learned in those short hours, really, since Tami welcomed us and Eckhart gave us that wonderful opening talk. I think our hearts are filled with gratitude for all the people that we have heard, but also for all the many people who have made this possible for us. The countless people who for a long time have prepared for this, and the people at the hotel who work here, the people with the sound system, how complicated all this is, and all the people whom we will never meet, who brought us here, who, if we came by car, who fixed the roads, the road crews. We think of them usually as a kind of inconvenience, but they are the people that get us here, and the personnel in the airports. And we are very, very blessed, and if we realize that, we are already aware of the way in which everything hangs together. We would not be here if it weren't for countless others who have brought us here. And during these days, we have heard wonderful things, and it's almost too much to take home with us. And there were many exclamation marks during this time, but maybe we should put a few question marks now. For instance, the question, what are we going to take back with us? How can we take it back? For the astronauts, before they come back into the atmosphere, they have sort of a re-entry panic. And I think some of us thinking of going home now could very well get this re-entry panic. We have been flying very high. So if we ask ourselves, what can we take home, we can begin with questioning the main terms. The whole conference was about living a life of presence. We can start asking ourselves, if we come home and our friends ask us, well, do you know now what is life? What is presence? We have to be able to give some sort of an answer. And we all came with some idea, and it was enriched. My own ideas about life and about presence were enormously enriched during these days. And each one takes a very different package of new ideas and new experiences back home. So I can only tell you how I now see life, how I would now answer the question, what is life? How I would now answer the question, what is presence? And then you can check that out against your own. Each one of us has a very different answer to these questions. And then I think what we can take home with us will quite easily and quite organically emerge from these questions. So let's start with the question, what is life? What is life? One thing that all the different speakers here made clear for me is that you cannot grasp it. You cannot put it into intellectual terms. You cannot grasp it. And yet you have to deal with it. You cannot grasp it, but you can understand it. There's a great difference between intellectual grasping and understanding. We all understand life. We all can understand life by opening our hearts to it, by letting life do something to us. It's like swimming. In order to know swimming, it doesn't help you to hear lectures or read books. You have to get into the water. And so when we go home, what is life will show itself by the way in which we live our daily life. And this strange coincidence that you cannot grasp it, but you can understand life when it takes hold of you, when it grasps you. That shows us that life is mystery. This word mystery is a very important word, and it came up at least under the surface in almost every talk that we listened to. Mystery. Mystery is not something mystifying. Mystery is an actuality. I don't even call it reality. It's an actuality with which we have to deal in our lives, and it is characterized by the fact that you cannot grasp it intellectually, but you can understand it if it grabs you, if it does something to you. You can really understand mystery. Some people call it God. I'm very careful with this God word because there are probably as many definitions of God in this room as there are people here. It's very difficult, and people have their own ideas. But if you speak of mystery, then you're really talking about what those who use the word God correctly mean. That with which we as human beings have to interact. We are built that way, with that mystery. We have to interact with it. We cannot grasp it ever, but we can understand it when it takes hold of you. Like music, we heard all this wonderful music here. How can you grab music intellectually? What can you say in intellectual terms about music? And yet you understand music when it does something to you. And when it does nothing to you, you say, I don't understand that music. But when you say, I don't understand it, that doesn't mean intellectually you can't analyze it. You never can analyze it intellectually. It means it doesn't do anything to me. And the same with mystery, that mystery which we call God. And in that mystery, we live and move and have our being. That's that wonderful sentence that St. Paul, when he speaks in Greece, in Athens, he preaches about God, and he speaks to people who are simply human beings. He can't presuppose that they are Christians or even Jews, simply human beings. As a human being to human beings, he speaks, and he says, in God we live and move and have our being. And in this mystery that we call life, we live and move and have our being. And that is a very different notion from God than this God over there or up there above the clouds. That is life in God. And that is what really counts, and that is what the human reality of that great mystery, that great divine mystery is. And as I said, human beings have to face that mystery. We are brought step by step in our lives to something which we cannot fathom, but with which we have to deal. Something with which we have to deal, to which we have to expose ourselves. Bernard of Clairvaux, a great medieval mystic, says, concepts, that which you can grasp, gives you knowledge. But that which grabs you gives you wisdom. And that is what we want. We want wisdom. And we are led through life, through this process of life. Every human being is led towards wisdom. That is the direction. And we are led through three great questions, three existential questions which no one can avoid sooner or later in life. And the first question, and very often children ask these questions already. They are very good. They are great philosophers if you allow them, at least before they go to school. And they ask questions like this. They ask, why? Why? All the time. Why is there anything rather than nothing? Why is there anything rather than nothing? We don't know. We have to let ourselves down into this question in silence, in that silence that Eckhart so eloquently conveys to us. I was going to say speak about, but speaking about silence is always a questionable thing. He does speak, but that doesn't get us there. The presence and the silence between the words, that's what it is. So every human being has to let ourselves down into that silence of why. Why is there anything? Why am I here? Why can I ask why? Amazing. And the second question is, what? What is it? Glass of water, yeah. When you look long enough, it becomes completely mysterious. You look at anything, of course the flowers, of course another human face, but your own hand, your own big toe, what is it? And somehow this too confronts us with mystery, but in a very different way from the question why. Why leads us down into the silence, but what leads us to a deep understanding that ultimately it wants to say something to me. Everything that there is wants to speak to me. Is ultimately a word that comes out of that mystery and speaks to me. And if I listen carefully, if I open my heart, I can understand it. I can't grasp it. I can't put it into words, but I can understand it. One of my Buddhist teachers used to say, oh, you people in the West, you always say you want to understand, but what you really want is to overstand everything. You're like people go into the shower and put up an umbrella, he said. To understand means to get wet, to let it do something to us. Then you understand it. Not by grasping it, but by being grasped by it. And when we look at anything in the world and ask ourselves, what is it, we find it is ultimately word that speaks to us. And now we have silence, and we have the word, we have the why and the what. And the third great question is, how? Life, how? How can I live it? How can I live it? By doing it. The how is always a question to doing it. And what do? We listen so carefully to this word that it leads us into the silence from which it comes. And understanding is the process by which we listen so deeply to the word that it takes us into the silence from which it comes. And that is a third way in which we interact with that great mystery, with that divine mystery towards which we are set in our life. And that is life, this interaction. And in order to really go into the silence, we need courage, we need trust. That is the first and most important thing that we need in order to open ourselves to life. Trust in life. That is very difficult, but it is the only way in which we can live, because the opposite is fear. Those are the two great choices we have in life. The only basic choice. Will I trust or will I fear? Will I trust life or will I fear? And by all means, let's make sure that we don't confuse fear with anxiety. Life is full of anxiety. Anxiety is inevitable in life, but fear is resistance against this anxiety, while trust goes through it. Anxiety, the very word anxiety, comes from the Latin angustia, which means narrowness. Life always leads us into narrow spots that we have to go through. We even came into this world, into this life, through a very narrow spot, but we did that very courageously. Those little babies, they don't yet think about it. It gets much more difficult when we grow up. Then too, whenever a narrow spot comes, we have to trust and go through with the same trust with which a baby is born, and that turns out to be a new birth. If we look back on our lives, we see, how many anxious moments, how many difficult, narrow spots we have gone through, and each one became, if we trustingly went through, became a new birth. So that is really encouraging. We can't see it when we look forward. When we look forward, we only see the narrow spot. But when we look back in our rear mirror, we see, oh, we have come through these narrow spots many times, and it was always a new birth, always a new birth. And that could give us courage to go forward. That's what we need. So in order to let ourselves down into that silence, we need trust. And now, if we trust in life, now we are prepared. Now when the next thing comes along, we will ask, what does this word say to me? We will listen. What does it say to me? And we will want to be surprised. And that is the other great virtue that we need in life. Faith, trust, and hope. And hope is openness for surprise. We should open our eyes in the morning saying to the new day, surprise me. And it will surprise us. It will not always be the surprises we want, but it will always be the surprises we need to grow and to be fully alive. So trust, faith, hope, and if you have that, this doing, that's the answer to the how, this living with trust and hope, will be love, because it will interconnect us with all others. And how many times we have heard in these past days about this interconnection. It's the most important thing, and love also the most important thing that has always been mentioned here. And love can easily be understood as the yes to belonging, a wholehearted yes to belonging, to mutual belonging, an existential yes to belonging limitlessly. That is love. Yes to limitless belonging, mutual belonging. And so if we have this trust, this hope, and this love, then we know, we understand what life is. We understand it by entering into it, by encountering mystery. That's one way in which one can point towards what life is. It's an encounter with mystery. It's a continuous encounter with mystery. And that is presence. Presence is encounter. Presence is something very different from side-by-sideness. Side-by-sideness becomes presence by encountering the other. Encounter and presence are very closely connected. And I'm speaking now about presence as experienced, as being present to another. And not only being present to another, but being present to the water we drink, and to the flowers we see, and to everything that comes our way. Everything, every person, every animal, every plant, every situation in life open for encounter. Then that's presence. That's being in the presence. St. Augustine says, heart speaks to heart. That is presence. When heart speaks to heart, when we open our heart, we make it vulnerable by opening it. And making it vulnerable means saying, I am through you, so I. That's a wonderful line by E.E. Cummings. I am through you, so I. So I'm through you, not only so good, so beautiful, so whatever it may be, but so I. That I can even say I is the gift of you. You precedes the I. Of course, that is not only the human you that we encounter, but that is the mystery as you. And that is the very mysterious reality that although we live and move and have our being in this divine mystery that we call life, that we experience as life, even though we live and move and have our being in it, it's not separate from us. Yet, within that living and moving and being, it has a direction. The mystery has a heart. The heart of the mystery, and heart speaks to heart there too. And when I say I am through you, so I mean that great mystery. That great mystery. It's not sort of a summation of all the human I and thou relationships that we have. And you might think, well, it just adds all up and then it becomes blurry. And so when I say I am through you, so I mean all these yous that I have met in my life, beginning with my mother or caretaker when I was a baby. Yes, that too, but we all have a story. Life is a story. We experience life as a story, not as a sequence of episodes. It's a story, a life story. And we want to tell that story to somebody. And the more we love somebody, the more we want to tell them everything, tell them that whole life story. And when we are lucky, it gets some way, but it never completely comes. We never find a human being who completely understands that story, because it's made for the heart of mystery. Henry Nouwen, probably many of you know his books, he used to have his students loved him very much, and when he came back from a trip or so, he would always bring slides. That was still the time when you brought all these slides, and then he make a little slideshow of his tour, and the students would be patient until about slide number 35 or so, and then it got a little boring. And, and Henry Nouwen said, I know what heaven will be like. I'll arrive and God will say, Henry, here you are, show me your slides. That's what all of us want. When we want somebody who wants to look at our slides, at the whole story. You see? And in that sense, we say, I am through you, so I. And that is what is ultimately behind presence as encounter. But then we have to ask, who is present? Who is that that says he's present? Well, I would say, I am present. And when I am really pressed and want to emphasize, say, I myself. This is very interesting. We have two all of a sudden, I and myself. How are they related? Is that one? Apparently it's not two. I know it's one, but there seems to be another dimension to my I. And that is what I call the self. And we have again and again spoken about the self here. How can I find that self? Well, that's actually a rather easy experiment. We can all sit, as we are sitting now, and watch ourselves. You can watch yourself sitting there, listening to me. I watch myself sitting there, talking to you. We watch ourselves. Now, that is very strange that we can watch ourselves. And maybe there's still somebody watching that watcher that's watching you. In that case, just go a little further back into the watcher, and suddenly you are the watcher whom nobody else can watch. You are the observer whom nobody else can observe. That's your self. You have reached yourself. And the I can be watched. The I is in time and in space, but the self is not in time and space. When you were a baby, you were yourself. And when you are 90 years old, you're the same self that you were when you were a baby. The self is not in time. And if it's not in time and space, otherwise it couldn't watch time and space, if it is not in time and space, it can't be divided. And that is a very important insight. There is only one self. We all share that one self. We are so different from one another. Even twins are so different from one another. Unique, each one of unique. Never again will that same person come that you are. And yet, the self, all of us have one self. And we live in this double realm. The poet Rilke calls it the double realm. In this double realm of time and eternity, time and now, of time and self. And if we hold this together, I myself, be holding together the time and space and something that goes infinitely beyond time and space, and communicates, obviously, with that mystery of which we have been speaking. Today is the first Sunday in the month, and on the first Sunday of the month, we always have at the monastery a puppet show for the children. We have a special service for children and then a puppet show. And in Austria, these puppet shows are very popular. And one monk might be playing with one hand the princess and with the other hand the crocodile that wants to eat the princess. This is how I imagine the self. You see? The one self is playing all these many roles that we are. And if you keep that in mind, even if you are the princess and you are encountering now the crocodile, it will be a very different experience if you know, basically, there's just one self for both of us. We just play different roles. And to keep that in mind, that although we are all one in the self, we have to play these different roles and play them well. We are given these roles. We are given a script that is much more detailed than we usually think. It's a very detailed script. There's very little that you can change. I don't know how much you can change at all. But the most important thing you can do differently, you can live it with trust in life and lovingly, with trust and hope and love. Or you can live it against the grain. And that is a failed life. But a life that you play, no matter how clearly the role is given to you. I will play this role now with trust. And then the present is that moment in which you now encounter what life gives you, this opportunity, this present moment. And in this present moment, life offers you many, many different opportunities. Opportunity is such an important word. But this now in which we live, this now to which belongs to ourself, is quite different from what we call the present moment. The present moment is a little segment of time called the present moment. And we think that the now is also a little stretch of time. Present moment, now, we use them interchangeably. So it's a little stretch of time. No. You can cut it in half, that little stretch, and half of it is not because it is no more, and the other half is not because it is not yet. So where is the present moment? Where is the now? The now is not in time. T.S. Eliot says in the Four Quartets, all is always now. All is always now. And somebody may say, well, if you say you can cut this little present moment in half, that's just hair splitting. Okay, as long as it's a hair, you can split it. Why not? So keep on splitting it, and you will find the now is not in time. And Eckhart had told us that very clearly and over again, that now is not in time. Rather, time is in the now. That's hard to understand, but try and work with that. Time is in the now. In the now you have the past and you have the future. Everything is given to you at this present moment, which is the now. And that we can call it present moment and now is because we live in this double realm of time and now, beyond time. And that is the great gift that we receive from life. I myself, as long as I remember I myself, I hold together the self that is one for all of us and the I that is my unique individuality, my uniqueness. If I forget this self, what happens then? Then I'm this little I in time and space among billions of others, and I get frightened. And then I shrivel up. At the moment I forget the self that unites us all, I shrivel up and I become the ego. The ego is not something additional to the I and self. The ego is simply a shriveled up I. Shriveled up because of fear. We know when we get afraid how we shrivel up in ourselves. When the I forgets that it belongs to all and loves the neighbor as itself, it shrivels up and becomes the ego. This commandment in the Hebrew Bible, love your neighbor as yourself, is so often misquoted, and people, you hear this even from a pulpit, love your neighbor like yourself. And then you have to go through those mental acrobatics of first loving yourself as if you were somebody else, and then loving somebody else the way you would love yourself if you were somebody else. In Hebrew, you could also say, love your neighbor like yourself, but it doesn't say that. It says, love your neighbor as yourself, because that's what you are. Your neighbor is yourself, and you are your neighbor's self. Self is only one, and the I, myself, loves the other one. That means, yes, we belong together. That's what love is, the yes to belonging, because we are one self. It's important to know about this ego, and fortunately we also heard a lot about the ego, and I'm sure your notion was also enriched by all the things that we heard. But the ego is so important because this kind of world that we built here is an ego world. Our civilization is an ego civilization. It is built on fear. The first thing that the ego does, it shrivels up in fear. The I shrivels up in fear, and this fear is basic for our society. And because out of fear comes aggression, out of fear comes rivalry. I have to defend myself here. Out of fear comes greed. There's not enough for all of us. All that is the fruit of fear. And the self trusts. The self replaces fear by trust. Trust in life, ultimately. Trust in life, that leads to peace. Peace not only as the absence of aggression, but peace as the fullness of life. Trust leads to cooperation instead of rivalry, and trust leads to sharing. And that's what we want, not this power pyramid of fear, where the upper ones treading on the lower ones, rivalry, greed. We want a network. We want a new world. And right now, we are standing on this threshold where either we will have a new world other than this power pyramid, a network world, network of networks, or we won't be able to make it. And all those who are very high up on this present pyramid, the pyramid that we have had ever since we had a civilization for 5,000 years or so, was this power pyramid. And those who really have knowledge and are high up in the pyramid say today, it can't go on like that. We have reached a point of where it can't go on. But the network can go on. And that is the important change that is happening today. We live in wonderful times, in times where we have to dismantle this pyramid. We don't have to do much of it. It's breaking down by itself, and replace it by networks, networks of cooperation and networks among networks. And it's interesting that the word network is so prominent in our language. It is the word for the future. That is what we need. So presence is this yes to interdependence, to universal interdependence. And ultimately, that is why presence is so important. It's the heartfelt openness to this network. But we can still, we have talked about time and now, and that the time is in the now, but a child might ask, why is there time at all? Why is there time at all? It would be so wonderful if there were just the great now. Who needs time? It's a difficult question, and I'm just suggesting one possible answer, but that the mystery or the universe or the divine mystery is so full, is so abundant, that it gives us one opportunity after the other. And that is how you can understand time. Time is one opportunity after the other, not just one. And if you miss this one, immediately life gives you the next opportunity, and immediately the next. It's like a banquet where one course is served after the other. And that leads us to what are we going to take home from here? What can we take with us? The readiness to live in the present moment and to avail ourselves of all those wonderful opportunities that life is giving us. Life is giving us one opportunity after the other. And that is the greatest present. It's interesting that present and gift is also interchangeable, the two words. So life gives us one gift after the other, and the gratefulness springs up in our hearts whenever somebody gives us something that is of great value and is freely given. Check that out against your own experience. It doesn't have to have monetary value, but it is valuable for you, as valuable as the little flower is that the child gives to the mother. That has no monetary value, but it's of greatest value for the mother. So when something is given to us, freely given, you don't have to work for it, you have to pay for it, you don't have to trade anything against it, freely given to you, and it is valuable for you, then joy springs up in your heart. And that joy is gratefulness. That joy is gratefulness. If you say thank you afterwards, that's very nice, but that is not necessary. It's good manners. But a child, when you bring them a gift and it grabs the gift and plays with it all afternoon, you will say, he was really grateful, wasn't he? And if he takes the gift and says, thank you, puts it away and plays with something else, he was well trained. He said thank you, but he wasn't grateful. And so we show ourselves grateful by doing something with this opportunity that is given to us, moment by moment. And that is something we can learn. That is something we can take home with us. That is how we come fully alive in the present. We can open ourselves to the opportunity that every moment offers us. And most of the time, it will be an opportunity to enjoy. If you doubt this at the moment, just try it. The reason why we doubt it is that we don't try it. We take everything for granted. But if you look, what opportunity is offered to me right now? For instance, when you sat down on your chair, did you appreciate that it was rather soft? We have to train sometimes other parts of our body to learn to be grateful, you know? The air in here is very pleasant. We breathe it. Probably very few of us have thought, this is nice present temperature, good air, they really keep the ventilation good. Moment by moment, as you train yourself to look, what is it here that life offers me? And then you can be absolutely grateful at all times, moment by moment. That doesn't mean that you can be grateful for everything. By no means. A justice system that is unjust was mentioned yesterday by Michael. Exploitation in private life, infidelity, lying, sicknesses, many, many things that you cannot be grateful for. But when you are in the situation in which one of those untoward things happen to you, and you are in training, you will ask yourself, and what is this now the opportunity for? And for this opportunity, you can be grateful. And this opportunity may be an opportunity to learn something, an opportunity to grow by the experience, an opportunity to protest. Think of the wonderful opportunities we have now with formerly you had to carry placards and walk in the streets. Now all you do is push a button on your computer. I hope you are availing yourselves of those opportunities. You see? And all this can be summarized in very simple formula: stop, look, go. Stop. This is very much what you teach the children when they are supposed to go safely across the street. Stop. Eckhart has told us over and over again about the stop. Stop, stop. And that takes courage. Takes courage to stop. Stop this race in which we are. Stop and become quiet. Second, look. what is the opportunity that life is offering me now? Listen with all your heart. What does this person need that I'm confronted with? What an opportunity to help, to encourage, to cheer up. Look, and then go. Because just as the children that stop and look and then don't go, and then next time they cross, there's already a car zooming by. So we also tend to stop and look and not do anything. Do what life offers you. And that may be anything from helping others to helping yourself, to sharing, to cooperating with others, all the things that we have mentioned. Every moment is an opportunity for trust in life, for openness for surprise in hope, and for love. And if we learn this simple thing, stop, look, go, we will have the presence in life that allows us to create a world that we can barely dream of, that goes beyond our best dreams, our greatest, most cherished dreams. And here, over 1,000 people together, we work together in this way. We have the opportunity to change the world. And that is what I hope for us. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Lord. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Tami.
Eckhart, come. And we'll take just some moments together to be in this space together. And we'll see everybody back here for our final session with Kim Eng and Eckhart Tolle after the break.
And let them know that David's signing books right